Hi guys, welcome back to Flora Fun and Food. My name is Lauren and today we are out at Taylor Family Orchard in Liberty, Missouri to do some apple picking because I have a few cooking projects I want to do and why not pick our own apples for it. So let's go. Our very first apple.
I get up.
So determined. You did it! Let's see, my guess was 30 pounds, Keegan's is 35.
There's 9.88.
And we got another bag.
That's gonna be a little heavier, I think. It's got it like 2/3 of a bushel.
The next day, my husband did me a huge favor and washed and scrubbed every single apple with a brush. Made sure he got as much of the, it was like an edible fungus or mold. It's not gonna hurt you, the orchard owner told us, but it's just really ugly looking. So these red apples, which I believe are either the Liberty or the Rome, they didn't have too much of that fungus on it, but you'll see here in a minute, the Gold Rush definitely had some black spots over them. So he went and just scrubbed every single apple until that kind of sticky residue didn't feel so sticky anymore, and let them sit on a table and dry. Here you can really see that fungus or mold or whatever it was that the owner of the orchard told us about. But like he said, it's totally harmless. You can eat it and it's not going to hurt you, but we went ahead and scrubbed each apple and look what a difference it made. After he had them all washed, he set them on our kitchen table to dry, and then I got to work on peeling, coring, and slicing each apple. Now my husband does have this kitchen gadget that is made for this, like it's an apple peeler and core and slicer. It's really old. He got it from his uncle, I think, and these things have been around for a long time. You see them constantly in flea markets and antique stores, and they really do work. So what I'm doing here is just peeling, slicing, all of that, and then I'm putting the apple slices in a big bowl of water mixed with lemon juice to prevent the browning that happens when the enzymes mix with the air and all of that, and that's why your fruit turns brown. So this just prevented them from browning. I am making sure that I'm cutting off any, bug spots or anything like that. So I got all of the red ones in the big bowl, and now I'm working on the Gold Rush. And these held up a little bit better. The red ones were kind of mushy. They had a lot of bug damage. These were definitely firmer, but the tops of these I had to kind of cut off a lot because they also had bug damage. It is kind of the end of the season here, so that is no fault of the orchard. So here I want to show you how I do this. You pull the lever back, you skewer the apple, you push the lever in so that you can move it towards the peeler. You start rotating it, and there's a slicer that peels the apple. Then it goes through the core, which bores kind of a hole through the middle, as well as slices it into rings like this. I did have to take off some bug damage here, but then I cut them in half, throw them in the bowl, and then I took the core off and kind of managed my peels. And this is how many apple slices we ended up with. This is a crazy amount of apples. So I ended up finding a recipe for apple butter since my dad personally requested some apple butter. It's his favorite. And the recipe I found, which I'll link below, actually uses an Instapot to make it. And my mom bought me this Instapot forever ago, and I've only used it a handful of times because I just don't quite know what to make in it yet. So this was a really good recipe to try. So it called for 2 tablespoons of vanilla, and then a teaspoon of ground clove, and then another teaspoon of ground nutmeg, After that, I added 3 tablespoons of ground cinnamon, and then 1 cup of brown sugar. And then I tried to use my wooden spatula to kind of mash this all down because it was really full, but I knew if I could chop up some of the apple slices, I would be able to fit all of these apples. Oh, and my 1/3 cup of water, which I forgot. But I knew I could get it below the fill line. The max fill line on these is really important. You don't want to overfill it. I know this by experience. It will overflow, boil over. You'll have a huge mess on your hands. So I just decided to try and mash it down as much as I could. These are going to cook down anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're in whole slices or not. Then I went ahead and put the lid on, closed the vent, set the pressure cook time for 15 minutes, and turned the pressure or the heat on high. Then I decided to go ahead and get my oven preheated to 350 while I put together the apple crisps. After dumping out the water, I decided to see how many 9x13 dishes I could fill with these apple slices, and it turned out I had just enough for 2 very full 9x13 Pyrex pans. After I had them kind of divvied out, I put all the apple slices back in my giant mixing bowl so that I could kind of get the ingredients thrown in. So I did 3 cups of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of clove, and 2 teaspoons of nutmeg. Now, hindsight, I would do maybe 1 of each of those. Then I did about 1.5 cups of flour. After mixing everything together really well, I put the filling into my 2 Pyrex dishes and got to work on the streusel kind of crumble topping. I did use Becky at Acre Homestead's recipe for this. She said her mom always makes this with equal parts butter, brown sugar, flour, and oats. And so that's what I'm doing here. I did 2 cups of butter, and I really should have left this out a little longer. It needs to be cold, but mine was like rock hard, so it made it a little harder to knead. Then I did 2 cups of brown sugar, 2 cups of flour, and then 2 cups of oats. Once my butter got a little more malleable, it was a lot easier. I went ahead and took my ring and my watch off because I knew this was going to be very messy. I did end up adding a little pinch of salt because my butter was unsalted, and salt just makes things, even sweet things, just taste better. So I started to work on kneading the butter. Once it kind of warmed up a little bit, it was a lot easier to kind of work with, but here I'm just kind of breaking it apart as much as I can. And then once it kind of got going, it was easy. So you just kind of knead this and mix it until you get really large clumps and everything is kind of moistened and sticky and delicious looking. Then I just spread it evenly over the top of both of my apple crisps. Keegan, my husband, said that this was the absolute best part and he wants me to just make the streusel for him. So no apples, he just wants streusel. I went ahead and stuck them in the oven that was preheated to 350 degrees. I did both at the same time and they cooked for 45 minutes. Once those were in the oven, I checked on our Instapot and it had cooked for 15 minutes and then sat and naturally vented for 20, which is what the recipe called for. So I opened the lid, stirred the contents around, and they were very, very cooked. So I decided that it was good to go. The recipe said if they weren't cooked, you could, put it on saute mode and cook them a little more. But mine were great, so I stuck my immersion blender in there and got it all blended up and nice and smooth. Now, I did taste this, and these apples were a little tangier than what I think you would typically use for apple butter, but I personally liked it, so we're gonna let my dad, the picky eater, taste test this and see if it's up to his standard. But I personally really liked it, so I think that the Gold Rush apples for this was a success. I went ahead and just found some old jars. These have old lids. You can't can with them, but you can freeze the apple butter, so I'm going to stick one of the quarts in my freezer. I did leave enough headspace so that I wouldn't break my jar. I filled a small one for my dad and decided I had plenty and he just needed a whole quart to himself, and then I will put the other quart in my refrigerator for this week's breakfasts. And there we go. We had 3 full quart jars full of apple butter. After that, I went ahead and took my crisps out of the oven because it had been about 45 minutes. The apples were bubbling, the topping was crispy and golden and smelled, oh my gosh, the whole house smelled like fall, and that is what I have been waiting for. I wish you guys could smell this because it was delicious. Well, guys, we did it. We have 3 quarts of apple butter and 2 apple crisps, fresh and ready to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.